We want to go on a journey. The 16 years of PDP. People say the oppositions, when they want to take a swipe at PDP, said 16 years of nothingness. But from speaking to people, different various stakeholders, they have been able to make me understand that the existence of Nigeria, most 90% of what we see today are product of the PDP's administration. And you are part of, yours was part of that administration. So we're going to look at agriculture now. Is a people's-oriented policy that have transformed the way people practice agriculture in Nigeria.
Thank you. Well, probably I may not take the same trajectory with you because of what you said. I actually listened on television. Young people will come talk about 16 years of PDP was a waste, and I smiled. There is no way 16 years of any government can be a waste. You see, we play dangerous politics in Nigeria, and we believe that national development is about disregarding others or insulting others or abusing others. No. And that is why this issue of, they did nothing. Let me say there's something, one big fallacy too that I've been listening, watched on television. Throughout the 16 years of PDP, the crude oil was being sold at about $100 per barrel. Which is a big fallacy. When Obasanjo took over, it was less than $30 per barrel. Even when I was a vice president in 2007, when we came in, it dropped so low. There was a particular week that got up to 30, just at something dollars per barrel. That is why, for the first time, we reduced the pump price of PMS, because Nigerians were paying higher than the laden cost. A president wouldn't have done that. Yes, later on the oil prices increased. But one thing people don't know is that because we are subsidizing the petroleum products, so even when the prices go high, the bulk of the money goes to private marketers. And that is why I felt that for this country to move on, we have to completely deregulate. Because there are sometimes you can't understand the figures. Maybe if you take me there, we'll talk a little more. And that was why immediately after my election in 2011, I felt that for us to gain from high petroleum prices, for this country's economy to be stable, we have to completely deregulate so that the money comes to Nigerians, not the money going to marketers. That sometimes you find it difficult to understand the mathematics. You see, but one key thing about a government is that nobody just wake up and run a country. PDP didn't just got up from sleep. Obasanjo had his own vision. Yar'Adua had his own vision. Then Jonathan, I had my own vision as the head of state. And of course, you know, in my days, we talked about the transformation agenda. That mantra drove our philosophy and was built on certain key things. First and foremost, having been a deputy governor at the state level for 8 years, within this present democratic setting, this Fourth Republic, I realized that the national unity of this country is critical. For you to move people forward, the people must be united. And that's why the first thing we did when I come on board was even to set up the Justice Belgore Committee that reviewed most of these. During the Obasanjo time, there were various meetings, conferences, and so on, to review most of these conferences. And let us look at those areas that they are recurring decimals, areas that the general people feel that things should be done differently. After compiling, we looked at it, and it's quite reasonable. And you cannot just wake up and push certain reforms to the people. So we now set up the Senator Okuromo's committee. These are outstanding issues in this country that we need to address. Go around the whole country and come up with a template on how we will drive these processes and come up with reforms that could clear some of those gray areas that is trying to split the building blocks of this country. When the committee submitted a report, we now set up the Justice Kutugi National Conference, the 2014 conference. So that conference, we didn't just wake up. It passed through different stages. Our commitment is to make sure that we come up with programs and policies and new laws to ensure the unity of this country. And one thing I also did is that if you check my appointments, I used to be very, very careful. Nigeria is extremely delicate because for you to give appointments that can encourage unity, you must balance all the interest groups. The first interest group is that you have major blocks, north, south, even within you have southwest, southeast, north central, you have those regional. Now we talk about geopolitical zones. Then beside that, you have this extreme religious divide, Muslims, Christians. And one thing during my time is that if a minister comes to me and says there's a vacancy for some heads of parastatals, maybe two, I say, hold on. It's difficult to give two people and look at competencies and it will show proper spread. You may give two of them, maybe Christians, two of them, maybe Muslims, and people will begin to. And when you used to take little, over the period, people analyze the appointment, they will see that you will be biased, maybe not deliberate. So I normally encourage the ministers to wait until other ministers to bring. By the time we get like 6 or 8, then you sit down and look at the geopoliticals, the religious balancing, look at the competencies, and they give the appointment. So whenever you are reading the appointments, people say, yes, it's somehow balanced. Even as at that, people still accuse me in one way or the other. And we also talk about, beside the unity, the stability of the country was also of utmost importance to PDP. And I drove it very, very well. And that's why if you look at during the Yaradua Jonathan time and the Jonathan time, we emphasize so much on the rule of law and the freedom of citizens. Because if you don't really keep to the laws, and when equals are treated unequally, and unequals are treated equally, that is one of the key definitions of corruption. Philosophers will tell you that in a society where equals are treated unequally, and unequals are treated equally, that tells you that that society is dead. That society is corrupt. So, but the only thing that can prevent that is following the rule of law strictly. And of course, the freedom of citizens, and make sure citizens are free. During that my time, nobody was on self-exile for one reason or the other. We accommodate all opinions. But still, for society to be stable and also for you to be sure that you encourage the unity of this country, then since it's a democratic setting, the electoral process must be credible. And that takes me to what you raised first, the issue of reforms in the INEC. We felt that the INEC must be independent. And I still believe one thing, that even the way electoral bodies are constituted in Africa need to be reviewed. So that whenever you consult an electoral body, you can attest and people can say, yes, this will be a neutral body. I try on my own to make sure INEC was independent, to make sure that by the time an INEC announces results, people will feel, yes, we have confidence in the process. People must first and foremost have confidence in the process. Some of this is psychological. If you constitute INEC and everybody appears to be from pro-you, that's why politicians are supposed not to be in INEC, then of course, no matter what they do, people will feel they are best. So those things are critical to us. And when we talked about also the good governance that PDP advocated, and I also advocated strongly, we came up with the Freedom of Information Act law to allow journalists to probe into government and we make sure that most government activities, especially things like procurement and so on, are done transparently so that you can question. You can also question in court because there are approved guidelines to be followed so that you can litigate if somebody doesn't follow those guidelines. And one thing PDP did is our vision for education. A number of people, when they are talking about governance issues, the president of a country, sometimes people talk about, how many roads did they build? How many wells did they build for what? So those are key. Naturally, I'll come to those, are key. But first and foremost, you must have a vision. And all the development projects must be built into that vision.